One of the main attractions for young people that Scouting has to offer is the challenge and excitement of activities. Whether you're a 6-year-old Beaver Scout getting in a boat on the water for the first time, or a 23-year-old Andrew Cooney becoming the youngest person to reach the South Pole. The challenge for us then is providing those activities. Activities that are exciting but not dangerous, challenging but not hazardous, thrilling, scary, but ultimately safe. So where do we start? What are the greatest risks? Where are the largest amounts of accidents? Out on the water? Out in the hills and mountains? Climbing or abseiling? Well no, actually, it's here in every scout hut and meeting place in the country. Over 30% of all our accidents occur during everyday weekly meetings, and although many are minor cuts and grazes, trips and falls, quickly healed and mended, some are just as tragic as the more dramatic accidents and stay with the victim for life. Camping and camp activities such as cooking, chopping wood and using lanterns accounts for 30% of accidents, with burns and scalds being a high percentage of these. And these are the types of injuries that don't always heal. So we've looked at accidents in the hut, 30%, and at camp, another 30%. What makes up the rest? We spoke to John Grantham, the association's insurance manager.
Apart from halls and camping, most accidents occur in a wide variety of locations. Swimming pools, parks, local authority buildings, playgrounds, anywhere where a scout leader might take the children for an activity. A significant number of accidents occur during wide games, which are very traditional, very popular, tend to take place at dusk or in the dark. My key piece of advice to leaders is to consider a practical risk assessment. Unfortunately, a lot of leaders get very uptight about the theory of risk assessments, being familiar with the sorts of things they get at work, which tend to run into many, many pages. But in fact, a practical on-the-spot risk assessment can help them identify hazards and find ways of avoiding.
Risk assessment is a simple 5-step process that looks at what can go wrong before, during and after an activity. That way steps can be taken to reduce or eliminate any potential problems. Risk assessment is basically only common sense. We all carry it out all day, every day. For example, if you're crossing a road, you'll look to see if there's any traffic coming, you'll look to see what speed any traffic is, what the weather conditions are like, if the road might be slippery or icy, and based on this you'll decide whether to cross or not.
So how does it work?
The first thing to do is identify any hazards.
So let's say some beavers were coming out here to practice catching a ball. What are the hazards out here?
Well, beavers being beavers would be more likely to spend time dropping and chasing the ball around rather than actually catching it, so naturally the tree would be a hazard. Also, if there's lots of beavers around, they'd end up crashing into each other a lot in the space. The road could also be a hazard, because even though it's a cul-de-sac, beavers being beavers will chase it and ball into the road if it goes out. The obvious one would be the ball being used. You wouldn't give the beavers a cricket ball to throw at each other, because that would hurt when they miss it. The second stage is to look at who might actually be harmed by any of these hazards. In this case, it would be the beavers or any of the adult helpers. The third stage is to consider the risk. You do this by looking at the hazards and how likely they are to cause an accident and say whether the risk is high or low. For example, how likely is it that somebody's going to be hit by one of the balls? In this case, very likely. Or how likely it is that someone is going to run into the tree? Again, with beavers, it's a very high likelihood. And how likely is it that one of the beavers will chase the ball into the road and get knocked over by a car? In this case, in the last couple of hours that we've been here, we haven't seen a car on the road, and there's a fence and a gate between the beavers and the road, so the risk here would be very low.
So what's the plan for this activity?
Well, by using soft balls such as this one, you get rid of the risk of people being hurt by the ball. By standing by the tree where you can see everything going on, you stop people running into the tree, and you can also check that nobody is climbing over the fence into the road. If you feel it needs it, you can also put another adult by the gate to further reduce the risk from the road.
Do you always need 2 adults?
Well, it's good practice, and with young children you often need more. So if something goes wrong, or one of them is unwell, or even just needs the loo, then you don't have to leave everybody else while you go and sort it out. You need to make sure you write down your risk assessment just in simple form in a notebook such as this. You might not need to do this for a simple game, but it is good practice to do it. If it's a large activity or a long way from a normal meeting place, or it involves a lot of adults, then everybody can read it and you don't have to tell everything to everyone. It also gives you something to look back on afterwards and see if it was right. You need to review and revise the assessment as you go along. So, for example, if more beavers turned up than expected and the risk of them bumping into each other was too high, you might move the activity to the park next door.
The good thing about having a set procedure is that it can be applied to whatever activity you're doing. Inside, for instance, the hazards might be different, but the approach is the same. A risk assessment carried out before this game picked out hazards typical to any scout hall in the country. Boxes around the room were pushed together to reduce the number of edges. The leader made sure the goalkeepers were positioned well away from the flagpole, and he chose to put them on solid boxes instead of chairs as the book suggested. He also added a rule that players can't run with the ball to cut down on physical contact. So much for Scout Hut-based accidents. What about the 30% of accidents that take place while camping? What are the hazards there? Some are easy to predict. Fires, lamps, and stoves themselves. The need for large amounts of hot water. Some areas need a bit more thought though. It's often the wobbly old trestle table that gives everybody splinters that goes to camp, when in actual fact it's the newest, more sturdy table that needs to be taken for safety's sake. Hi Stuart, what's going on here?
Well, we're doing some basic fire lighting and teaching some cooking skills. We always camp on farms and the patrols cook for themselves, so it's an important skill for them.
And what are the hazards?
Well, there's the fires, hot water, hot fat, the equipment they use to prepare the food, such as the sharp knives. There's the health and hygiene aspects and the cooking itself, of course. A sausage that's cooked on the outside and all black might look as if it's done, but that's going to give someone a dodgy stomach later on.
Activities like games and cooking aren't the only areas that present hazards. Risk assessments apply to buildings too. In this building, for instance, over the last few years, they've added things like security glass, grills at the windows to stop stray footballs, a hook for the ladder so the kids don't fall over it, and so on. And they risk assess the building and grounds each year to see if anything else needs doing. They also have an accident and near miss book.
Every incident, however minor, has to go in here, and if there are two incidents, the same sort of thing, I have to have a look at it.
What sort of things have you picked up through the book?
We recently had a problem with beavers cutting their fingers, and now we use child-friendly scissors. We had a problem with cubs injuring themselves on stacks of chairs. Now, no chairs can be stacked in the hall at all.
And why near misses a concern?
Recording near misses helps us prevent serious accidents in the future.
Of course, however hard we try to be safe, accidents will occasionally happen and they need to be recorded locally. If a serious accident or incident occurs, one that involves someone being treated by a doctor, dentist or hospital, or if someone needs rescuing by the emergency services or someone dies, headquarters must be told immediately.
If an accident occurs, then it's important that you identify people around who actually saw what happened and who can actually give an accurate description of that at a later date. You need to contact the Scout Information Centre at Gilwell Park or Scout Insurance Services direct to request an incident report form. The person that completes that form should actually be unconnected with the incident, so it should be an unbiased person who actually guides the process. But the form contains various sections for giving information about the activity, the incident itself, and then witness statement forms for the people who actually saw what happened. There are a wide number of fact sheets available from the Information Centre at Gilwell Park, which detail what to do in the event of an incident, as well as providing information on how to run activities safely.
So, using the 5 steps to risk assessment, we demonstrate that we do take safety seriously and we make our activities as safe as they can be. 1. Look for hazards. 2. Decide who might be harmed and how. 3. Consider the risk and whether it's high or low, and review your precautions. 4. Write it down. And 5. Review it both during and after. Safety is important, but of course, if we're not careful, we could end up becoming paranoid, with the end result being utterly safe, utterly boring and unexciting scouting. So there is a balance to be found. We need to provide scouting that is exciting but not dangerous, and adventurous but not hazardous. Take care.